Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidate interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Shel Gross, and I would like to introduce Maia Pearson, running for State Assembly in District 78. As we begin, I'd like you to give an opening statement as to the educational, vocational, and civic experience you have, which qualifies you for this office, and why you are running for State Assembly.
Yes, thank you. I first want to say thank you to Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters for your continued work to ensure that Wisconsinites are informed voters, and affording me the opportunity to let folks know more about who I am and the work I like to do at the Capitol in collaboration with them. So hello, everyone. My name is Maia Pearson. I'm a third-generation South Madisonian, a working mother of 3 teenagers, and currently serve as the Vice President of Madison's Board of Education. I understand firsthand what it is like to live in poverty in Wisconsin, receive support from our state to make ends meet, and I know what it's like to work hard to ensure that not only my family, but my community has access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Most of my career has been focused on youth development, advocating for affordable and accessible college, as well as voter rights. But I have over a decade of experience working in collaboration with community members, organizations, businesses, local, state, and national electeds to tackle issues like the underinvestment of public education, the dismantling of worker rights, and the housing crisis, and education and action on environmental justice, just to name a few. I graduated from Madison schools, and I'm a proud alum of West High School. And I also graduated from UW-Madison with a bachelor's in international relations. My dream was to be a diplomat, to work with developing countries in collaboration with the US to ensure that those communities were able to develop in a way that is essential for their cultural lives. And so this work is very important to me, not only because of my work as a school board member and working really hard on our budget, and understanding that in our communities, we just have not had continued investment in public education, which is the basis of life. For our not just our youth, but for everyone in our community. It is what is opening access to employment, and it is what is opening access to making our communities better. And so I would say that that is what my experience has afforded me to be able to run for this office.
Is there any process you believe the Wisconsin legislature should put in place now for redistricting after the next national census?
Yes, so I do think the maps that were signed into legislation in February by Governor Evers, thank you, definitely made things fair. And so what we're seeing across our state is that in areas that have been heavily gerrymandered, that are more, I would say, balanced, where there are candidates who are running who may not have ever dreamed on running in their district, in their area, to be able to have the opportunity to represent their community. And so we're seeing a lot of activity around voter engagement, a lot of activity around civic engagement as it relates to folks running for office. And that's not just only in the state assembly, that's also in the Senate. We're seeing it in local elections and county boards, in city elections for aldermen and councils. We're also seeing it for school boards. So it definitely is the right opportunity. I think what can happen more is that there are maps that the people also put forth. And although these maps are fair that we have now, I do think that there's the opportunity to make them even more balanced. I would definitely was part of some of the work at the grassroots level to fight for fair maps. And so it's definitely work that I'm intimately knowledgeable about, and want to make sure that in the next cycle that we are working to make these maps even better, and that we don't get kind of stuck in where we're at now. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What issues, if any, do you think you could work on effectively in a bipartisan manner in the next session?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah. What issues, if any, do you think you could work on effectively in a bipartisan manner in the next session?
Okay, absolutely. So the work on the school board is nonpartisan. And so our work truly is about ensuring the success of young people in our city. And honestly, for in our county, because we do have a lot of students who come into our district from across our county. And so the work is all about making sure that everyone has access and becomes successful. So I think the work that I do also too in my community, where we're trying to ensure that people have access to housing, we're trying to make sure that people have access to voter rights. All of it is nonpartisan. It's not about a party line. It's an issue that everyone should be afforded under the Constitution. And so for me, I think that the issues that we have kind of put into boxes in partisanship, honestly, it comes out to be that they are just normal, regular issues that folks should have access to. And so I am looking forward to working on behalf of all Wisconsinites and working across lines. And I just see this work as a human issue, as a people issue, and making sure that we are making decisions that work for all Wisconsinites and not just only just for a few folks in our state. And so I would say all of them. I think that's harder to pinpoint because that's how I view the work.
What role, if any, do you think the legislature should have in addressing conditions in Wisconsin's state prisons?
Yeah, so I do think that there is work that can be done at the state legislature avenue, and I know that there has been some work that has been done by certain Dems that have been working to ensure that inmates have safer environments. But then also there are reentry programs into our community that, ensure that inmates are having access to education when they are released, having access to housing and jobs. So I think at the state legislature, trying to ensure that we are making policies and legislation that makes that reality, and that's also investing in other community organizations that are also doing some of that work. So what we see is some faith communities that go into our prisons and working with inmates. We see, I know our school district has a program that works with youth in the juvenile justice system. So I think having investments into those programs. But ultimately, again, it goes back down to a human issue. How are we ensuring that we are making communities safe as possible in a way that folks have dignified housing? People have access to public education. People have access to transportation. People have access to employment that pays a living wage. As we know, the minimum wage is not a livable wage. And so I think that it's a tiered approach. And I think that the work is all connected. And so it's not just only how do we work on the criminal justice system, but how are we working on every single system? Because it is about connecting the dots.
What role do you think the state legislature has in ensuring successful outcomes for all students, including those with disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So one, this is work that I am currently doing in my current role as the vice president of our school board, and going into my second term in my fourth year. As we are crafting our budget, we have not had the investment from our state to ensure that we are able to operate and bolster our programming. I think our community has been fortunate that they really care about public education. And so folks are, I would say for the most part, willing to ensure that we invest in public education in our area in Dane County. but that's not the reality across our state, right? And so I think part of it is how are we increasing our wages for our teachers? But to do that, we need investment from the state, more investment from the state. How are we fully funding classrooms and making sure that, educators are not pulling, having the burden of having to pull from their own resources to ensure the success of our students? Not to say that they don't want to, because they definitely do, but we should be also making sure that we are providing that for our students. How are we providing universal, I would like to provide universal free lunch across our state. We've seen the success of those programs in other states like Minnesota, and the investment that happens when we do little things like, well, it's not really little, but when we do things like that, and how impactful that they are for our youth and their families. Also trying to increase the share of public education funding in the state budget. And we're thankful for the investment that Governor Evers did pass to ensure for the next like decades that we will get an increase. But it's still not enough. And I think that the governor understands that. And I think that there are legislators that understand that. But because of the way our legislature is currently, it has been very difficult. So I definitely support making ways, including changing the way that public education is calculated and then funded for our state.
Are there any steps you believe the legislature should take to further address mental health and substance abuse disorders?
Yes. Again, I think of it in a circle, in a continuum, in connecting the dots. And so what we have seen is a spike in drug use in our communities. A lot of it has to do with mental health, but it's also having to do with community resources and what people have access to. And so I definitely support ensuring that we are increasing the funding for programs like Telarium and other kind of programs that kind of work directly with of folks that are have substance abuse, but also making sure that we are increasing social workers, we're increasing clinical social workers. And to do that is to be creative in how we are retaining and recruiting. So there is licensures across in our state that I think we can change the way that folks are able to get those. There are folks that have not been able to pass some of the licensure requirements simply because there's a language barrier. However, they have the skills and the education to do so and work with people from different communities. I think that there is also ways that we can connect with other states in making agreements where it allows us to recruit folks. I mean, there is a shortage of social workers and clinical social workers and other mental health supports in our community. And that profession is not growing the way that we would like them to here. And we are not retaining good folks. And I think that that's a way to retain good folks and ensure that they are able to provide what is necessary in our community. So bolstering and being creative about the ways that we work with other states, figuring out ways that we can attract people here, but also invest in the people that do stay here, and ensure that we can connect them to people who need them the most. And then also, again, like I said before, also investing in all the other things like housing, education, food access for our communities.
What other priorities do you have for your term in office?
Yeah, absolutely. So I also want to work on environmental justice. And so for me, that is something that has been essential as a millennial, and growing up in this space of where I've seen where our environment is beautiful. I mean, not to say that it isn't now, but that we growing up, it was like we can be in the lakes without having issues of possible contamination and or issues of contamination. I've grew up in this community where we've had like drinking water was some of the best drinking water in our nation, right? And so for me, protecting our environment is essential, not only for us currently, but also for the future, for my children and my children's children. Wisconsin, I am proud to be in a state that values our public parks, that values our lakes, that values our state parks, and that values our environment in that way. And so it's definitely making sure that we pass the Wisconsin's Green New Deal, that we are prioritizing PFAS mitigation across the state, that we're reducing corporate greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm proud to be part of a board that definitely invests in our district as we are building new schools, as we are updating our schools, and trying to ensure that by 2050 that we are eliminating greenhouse gases and the usage through our district. So being a part of some of the work currently, but also fighting for it in the community, and then also wanting to fight for environmental justice and at the state level. I also think reproductive freedom. We definitely need to repeal Wisconsin's archaic 1849 abortion law, and we need to codify abortion rights in the Wisconsin Constitution. That also includes expanding reproductive health across Wisconsin, in our cities, in our rural areas, but also making sure that we are informing young people and the education around ensuring that people are being safe and making the best decisions for themselves and their families. And so for me, it's definitely other issues of environmental justice, the reproductive freedom, worker rights, definitely focusing on how do we close the racial and gender gaps when it comes to wealth. How are we establishing livable minimum wage, because our current minimum wage is not livable. And so, yeah, thank you.
What would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
Yeah, thank you. What I would like to say is that I'm running for Wisconsin State Assembly District 78 because we deserve to be fought for. As I've been knocking doors, folks have expressed strongly that they are tired of a Wisconsin that is not working for everyone. We have an opportunity to deliver on what Wisconsinites have been asking for from our state across access to affordable childcare, to stronger worker rights, to well-funded public education, reproductive freedoms, from dignified, affordable housing to environmental justice. I will definitely be grateful for the opportunity to work alongside the people of the 78th, but also alongside all Wisconsinites as we ensure our collective future is bright and strong. And I just want to say that as a native Madisonian, I think it's important that we work in collaboration with each other at every level, no matter who we are, because ultimately, what is happening to us right now in our country and in our state should not be happening. And I'm asking that you vote August 13th, which is the primary. And to learn more about me and my grassroots campaign, please visit www.maiapearson.vote. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
I want to thank Maia for speaking with us and thank the viewing audience for taking the time to know your candidates. I want to remind everyone that primary election day is Tuesday, August 13th, and the general election is Tuesday, November 5th. Every election is important. Please vote. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I thank you for joining us.